Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Ramin Azarm here from Flex to Success Clinical Rehabilitation Services. Just wanted to put out another video. I've been getting some requests on doing a video on narcissism. Some of my friends and some of my patients, they tend to use a lot of labeling where they really honestly believe that certain people in their lives are narcissists. I've just been noticing that term has been getting thrown around a lot, and I'd just like to basically clear up some of the confusion and put a video out that would help, define and give people a better understanding of what narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder actually is, what it entails, how to treat it, and how to cope with it if you're in a relationship with somebody who is a narcissist. So first off, let's define narcissism. So what is narcissism? Narcissism is a pervasive, persistent pattern of behavior that involves grandiosity, a need for admiration, self-entitlement. Usually begins in early adulthood, from 18 to 30, and involves multiple forms of dysfunctional behavior patterns, and I'm going to get into exactly what I mean by that. So in order to be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, you have to fit a certain criteria. And the information that I'm providing in this video comes directly from the DSM-5. I know some people put out videos on narcissism and they go by Psychology Today or, one of these other websites where they kind of just glaze over like what narcissism actually is. I like to go to the source. So I only deal with the DSM-5, and all the information that I provide is evidence-based and comes directly from that book. So, what is the first criteria of narcissism? Well, as we mentioned, narcissism entails grandiosity, self-entitlement, a lack of empathy, arrogance, and poor self-esteem. So the first criteria is a grandiose sense of self. So what is grandiosity? So grandiose means like you consider yourself to basically have traits that are exceptionally well above anybody else surrounding you. So you see yourself as above people. It's an elitist attitude. An example of grandiosity would be telling people that you can fly, believing that you're the most brilliant person in the room, even though you know nothing about the subject matter material. Grandiosity could be assuming that you're going to get 100 on a test, meanwhile you haven't studied for 1 second. Now, if you're someone that can do that, and that's like a normal baseline part of who you are, that's different. But like if you're someone that's been like failing tests consistently, and you just have this like idea that like you're just going to walk in there and get like 100 with no studying whatsoever, that's a bit grandiose. So, people with narcissistic personality disorder, they tend to have a very grandiose sense of self. They see themselves as these perfect, amazing people that can basically do anything, tell them to lift a car, they'll say they can lift it. Tell them to, run 30 miles. They'll just jump into a race and start trying to run 30 miles, even though they've never ran before. They'll tend to and they'll tend to argue with other people that they can do these things, even though deep down inside they know that they kind of can't. But they have to show that front that like, they're this person that could do anything. And that basically is, one of many criteria which makes up for their low self-esteem. So narcissists tend to think very poorly of themselves deep down inside, and they use their this outward sense of self, this outward sense of superiority to kind of hide how they really feel on the inside. Very, very common among narcissists. And when you get to know a narcissist, you realize like how low their self-esteem actually is. It's really sad. The second criteria is they're preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, brilliance. They believe they're the perfect boyfriend or the perfect girlfriend. They have this idealist sense of their love relationships, like they really believe their relationships are so perfect. And everybody else that sees problems with their relationships, well, they just have issues and they're just not as intelligent, and they don't have the insight that the narcissist believes their insight is below their level, so they just can't see like how perfect their relationship actually is, when in reality, the relationship could be totally dysfunctional, but the narcissist's sense of what's actually going on is very different than what reality is. So the next criteria is they believe that they're special. Narcissists tend to believe that they are separate from the rest of the population, that people should look up to them, and they have special qualities about them that just put them in a different category than everybody else. When I say special, I mean they expect special attention. They expect to be treated differently. They expect to be treated better than other people. They expect to be favored. They expect to get the biggest piece of chicken, every single night for dinner. You know what I mean? Like the narcissists, like they really see themselves as like a special entity to everybody else. They're like, almost as if they weren't human. Narcissists tend to have godlike thinking. They believe that like they're a supreme being and everyone else is basically at their disposal. The next criteria is they require excessive admiration. Now, why do you think that is? Narcissists require excessive admiration because, one, they're trying to make up for the fact that their self-esteem is so low and they feel so poorly about themselves that they need to be esteemed constantly to hide that reality. Also, the narcissist requires excessive admiration because, one, it makes them feel good. They get a high off of it. They get a high off people telling them how great they are. And they really look for, they feel safe. It's a secure situation for them to be around people that are telling them how great they are. They don't feel threatened. And that's a huge key for the narcissist, to feel like they're in a safe space, because in reality, they're very fragile and they're very vulnerable. And being around people who are just constantly admiring who they are just makes them feel better. It makes them feel confident in who they are, even if they don't really feel that confident internally. The next criteria for narcissistic personality disorder is they are interpersonally exploitative. What does that mean? So interpersonally meaning like the relationships that they have outside of friendships and family are basically all agenda based. They only make friends with people because they're trying to accomplish a certain goal. So if you're friends with a narcissist and they don't really look at you as like a close friend, you're probably there for some specific reason. You're serving some type of purpose for that person. Otherwise, they wouldn't even spend 1 second on you. So why is this dysfunctional? Because they really have no interest in that person's thoughts, feelings. They don't want to learn anything about that person. They don't care about that person's accomplishments. Like, they really don't care about building a serious, close friendship with that person. All they care about is whatever ends they're trying to get to, they want that person to help them get there. And if that person isn't going to do that, they will drop that person like a bad habit. And when I say a bad habit, I mean like they have absolutely no empathy for this person. If they die, they die. They totally emotionally disconnected, and no empathy, no understanding of like what that person's going through. So like they'll push somebody like to the point of destruction, and when the person crumbles, they'll basically say, well, I guess you weren't the person that was meant to help me get to where I need to go. I just got to find somebody else now. They'll just walk over the dead bodies like they don't even matter. And it really is that cold. I'm not being dramatic. I'm not exaggerating. Like the narcissist is really that systematic and that logical about things. They are like logical to the point of being extremely cold, and they don't they don't have any remorse. Um, either you can, in their minds, it's like either you can get the job done or you can't. And if you can't, then it's like they throw you away like you never mattered in the first place. This becomes really damaging for people because if they really value their relationship with the narcissist and the narcissist throws them out like that, this can be really damaging um, to the person who was trying to have a connection with the narcissist. So my advice would be to be aware of these characteristics, be aware of these criteria. And if you're friends with somebody who's like this, be cautious. You could still continue to be friends with a narcissist, but you have to understand what you're dealing with. If you know that you're dealing with a narcissist, you have to understand that once you guys disagree, the relationship is over. That's it. There is no repairing, there is no healing, there is no coming back from that. You disagree with the narcissist wants nothing to do with you. You're their mortal enemy for life. So as long as you understand that and you're detached and you can just let the narcissist go the same way they'll let you go, then you're fine. You're protected and you won't have anything to worry about. But if you get caught up in the relationship and you make the mistake of thinking that the narcissist has any, values you in any type of way, you're setting yourself up to be hurt and upset. So I think that's important to note. So the next criteria is a lack of empathy, which we kind of already touched on. Not only in interpersonal relationships, but even like with friends and family. Like the narcissist really, they stand alone. Like the old saying, the cheese stands alone. The narcissist stands alone. Like the only person that really matters to a narcissist is them. Everyone else is kind of just along for the ride, and they unfortunately can turn on anybody. So friends, family, it doesn't really matter. As long as they're going along with what the narcissist wants, he or she is okay with it. Once they're not, friend, family, foe, it really doesn't matter. They'll just wage war on you. So that's something to kind of keep in mind when you're dealing with a narcissist, is they don't really care too much about other people. The narcissist, the next criteria is enviousness. So they either envy other people, or they believe that other people are envious of them, and they kind of shoot back and forth between the two. So like if they're really, really envious of someone, it'll get to the point where they hate them, and then they'll shift back again and they'll say, oh yeah, well that person's probably envious of me because I'm so great and I'm so perfect. And then they'll shoot back the other way again, when they have like a down day or their mood is low and they're not feeling as good as they usually do. And, they cycle between being envious of other people and then believing that other people are envious of them. So that's something that you'll have, if you're friends with a narcissist or you're in close contact with a narcissist, you'll notice they talk a lot about either other people being envious of them or them being envious of what other people have. And this will be a very dominant theme in a lot of the conversation. So it's kind of like a red flag that like you're with somebody who's a narcissist if they're doing that. The last criteria is arrogance. They tend to be extremely arrogant. They act as if, it's elitist. They believe they're above people. They show a lot of haughty behaviors, which is like another fancy word for, arrogant behaviors or elitist behaviors or superiority. And their attitude will usually come off that way. So like, you can, they can have a belief and then you can come and say, hey, well, did you look at it from this angle? And you'll give them this like laid out supportive argument of like, why you think the way that you do. And other people will be like, wow, yeah, like that's really interesting. I never looked at it from that angle. The narcissist will sneer and, They'll be like, ugh, this guy, who does he think he is coming over here telling me what's what? Instead of accepting, like the intelligent counter argument and looking at it from the angle that the other person's coming with, they'll kind of just shut that person down or make fun of them or try to put them down in some way and make them feel like shit about themselves. The narcissist can't ever allow anybody to gain attention or to, they can't let anyone be smarter than them. They have to be the smartest person in the room. So even if someone else says, hey, I have experience in this area, I can really help you shape your belief system around this, right? The narcissist will reject them 99% of the time. They're not open to new lessons. They're not open, everything's a competition. They just look at you as in the way. So whether you're bringing something valuable to the table or not, you're just in the way. They're in competition with everybody. So that sums up the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. There are usually two types of therapy that work really well with this personality type. It's a cluster B personality. And one is cognitive behavioral therapy, which focuses on thoughts, actions, and feelings, right? So helping the narcissist understand like the way they feel about something, how it impacts their thoughts, and then how it impacts their actions. So that's one therapy that I like to use with narcissists that I think works really well. Another type of therapy that works really well with narcissists is psychoanalytic behavioral therapy. Basically like pinpointing and focusing on specific behaviors that the narcissist does that cause a lot of damage either to them or somebody else, and helping them just focus on that one behavior and changing that one behavior instead of like the whole vast array of like, their issues and what's going on. Also, psychoanalytic behavior therapy works as well because it looks at their childhood and it kind of like helps them deal with like repressed memories and things that happened in their past that might be affecting why they behave the way they do in the future. And when the narcissist can learn to make those connections, a lot of times it'll help them realize the need for change in their behaviors. One, because they finally come to the realization that maybe the way they're behaving isn't making them feel good. And I know, like, people laugh sometimes when I say this because they're like, "Oh, see, it always comes back to the narcissist." Well, yeah, that's the personality paradigm. Is that they're constantly focused on themselves. So when you make them aware of something that's affecting them negatively, then they'll want to change it. And you know what? By them changing that, they might be helping somebody else who that negative behavior is affecting. So I don't care why they change it. As long as I get them to realize something about them is negative and hurting either themselves or other people, and they decide to change it for that reason, I'm happy with that as a therapist. I'm like, okay, we're making progress. You can't move mountains in a day. So I take my time with these types of things and I try to work incrementally because I feel like that's the only way to make like solidified changes. And then the last therapy that works really well is like objective solution focused therapy. And again, that's like a type of therapy that basically like pinpoints certain behaviors and focuses on them and then helps the narcissist overcome any barriers that could be in their way to changing those behaviors. And it's a really good type of therapy because it's very short term and it basically identifies like specific key areas that are the most important to the narcissist that are causing him usually the most problems, changing those, and then usually from that starting point the narcissist will be, hopefully the hope is that they'll become more aware and start to change things on their own by realizing that they're going in the wrong direction. So like for instance, like if a narcissist has a substance use disorder, which is like a very common comorbidity with narcissistic personality disorder, helping them realize that the substance use disorder might be leading to all these other negative behaviors, helping them get over the substance use disorder will start to trickle down to some of the other behavior patterns and help them, recenter themselves and refocus themselves to a much more productive, cooperative, healthy form of lifestyle. So that's my video on narcissistic personality disorder. Any questions, please comment below. Again, this is Ramin Azarm, Flex to Success Clinical Rehabilitation Services. This is May 9th, and have a great day, everybody. Bye.